Go for it. Take it away, Mayor Adams.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you to the regularly scheduled Monrovia City Council meeting this Tuesday, March 16th. And I open with my mask on as a reminder. We're still not out of the woods yet, so wear your mask and try to sanitize your hands and do all the things you're supposed to do. This evening, Pastor Larry Spicer will lead us in an invocation. Larry, we appreciate your volunteering for this, and it's all yours.
Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking you for guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion. Allow us to grow closer as a group and nurture the bonds of the community. Fill us with your grace, Lord God, as we make decisions. Continue to remind us that all that we do here today, all that we accomplish is for the pursuit of truth, for the greater glory of you, and for the service of humanity. We ask all these things in your name. Amen.
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 Thank you, Larry. I appreciate you stepping in at the last minute like that. Our Pledge of Allegiance this evening will be given by Councilmember Shevlin. If you'd all rise, I'm going to get my flag.
Okay, and would everyone else mute your mic? And if you would please put your hand over your heart and you can. You know what?
Okay.
I just muted my own mic.
Yeah, you were muted throughout the whole thing, Becky, but we followed you well. And
I was following my own directions very well.
yes, you did. But I think we're okay. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Alice, would you please call the roll?
Yes, council members Blackburn,
Here.
Shevlin,
Here.
Spicer,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Crudgington,
Here.
and Mayor Adams.
Here. Thank you so much. We had no closed session, so there's no report due there. We have two proclamations this evening that I will read. The first is for the American Red Cross, and it reads, whereas American Red Cross Month is a special time to honor the kindness of our neighbors who aid families in need every day in Monrovia, across the United States, and around the world. Their dedication touches millions of lives each year as they carry out the organization's 140-year mission of preventing and alleviating suffering. And whereas during the trying times of the coronavirus pandemic, people have stepped up to help others in need, whether it was responding to this year's record-breaking disasters across the country, or rolling up their sleeves to give blood when our country faced a severe blood shortage. And whereas in Monrovia, families have relied on disaster response volunteers for comfort and hope while coping with home fires and other disasters. And whereas the Western Los Angeles chapter volunteers have supported local families in other ways too, including supplying local hospitals with blood and convalescent plasma for a treatment for COVID-19. This life-saving work is vital to strengthening our community's resilience. And whereas nearly 200 years since the birth of the American Red Cross founder Clara Barton, we dedicate this month of March to all those who continue to advance her noble legacy, and we ask others to join in their commitment to care for people in need. Now, therefore, I, Tom Adams, Mayor of the City of Monrovia, along with the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of March 2021 as American Red Cross Month and encourage all Monrovians to support this organization and its noble humanitarian mission. This proclamation is dated today, March 16th, 2021. Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
sorry, Mayor Adams. We have Erica from the San Gabriel Valley chapter.
Oh,
I
I'm
believe.
sorry,
That's
Erica, I
okay.
didn't see you there. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, City Council. On behalf of the Red Cross, I just want to thank the City of Monrovia. The City of Monrovia has always been a great partner and continues to support us. So I am greatly appreciative that you're proclaiming March as Red Cross Month. And thank you to Susie Dobson, who has always been a pleasure to work with as well, as we saw last year or last summer with the Bobcat fire. It was just a great partnership with the city. So thank you. And that's it. Thank you.
Erica, thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Okay, we'll now move on to PR2, proclaiming March 29th, 2021 as National Vietnam War Veterans Day. Whereas it is an honor to recognize the many veterans who have made countless sacrifices for Monrovia families, and whereas more than 58,000 service members made the ultimate sacrifice during the Vietnam War. Thousands more were wounded and 1,600 remain missing in action. And whereas since their return, these veterans have contributed tremendously to their communities, their states, and the nation. And whereas as citizens of the great city of Monrovia, we must never forget the pain and suffering that lingers today for the men and women who fought with honor and distinction in the name of freedom and democracy for all. And whereas we can never fully repair a debt of gratitude to these brave men and women who served, were wounded, or died in battle, and whereas Vietnam War Veterans Day presents the opportunity for the people of Monrovia to honor and thank our Vietnam veterans for their service to our country. Now, therefore, I, Tom Adams, Mayor of the City of Monrovia, California, along with the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim March 29th, 2021 as National Vietnam War Veterans Day in Monrovia, and urge the community to show our Vietnam veterans, their families, and all of the men and women who have served our country the fullest respect and support of a grateful state and nation. Dated the 16th day of March 2021. My understanding is we're going to get this over to Chuck Keene, along with the Allied Veterans Council. But I would also ask that we make this proclamation this evening in memory of Hector Elizalde. Today, several of us, Larry Spicer, Becky Shevlin, myself, our city manager, representatives from City Hall, police, and fire departments all attended the service for Hector today. And it was our opportunity to say our final farewells to him and to his family. Hector not only served our nation, but he served our veterans for decades and truly served our veterans more than any other civil servant I've ever known. So if we could get a copy of this perhaps over to the Elizalde family, I know they would be appreciative of that. We're going to miss Hector, and this is just one more way for us to say thank you to him. Thank you. We also have PR3, the Pasadena Humane Society Pet of the Month, and I'll call on Lauren Vasquez, our Assistant City Manager. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Adams and council members. Michelle Holbrook from the Pasadena Humane Society has sent another video to share with our council and our community. So here we go. Let me share. Here we go.
Hello there, City of Monrovia, and good evening. This is Michelle from Pasadena Humane, and I am bringing to you the Pet of the Month. Now, I know when you think about Pasadena Humane, it's typically cats and dogs, and that's normally the pets that I show you, but I want to show you something a little bit different tonight. So this cute little girl is a 5-week-old hamster who is actually born in our care. She's very teeny tiny and a little bit on the skittish side, but she's super adorable. She came to us, like I said, she was born here in our care because her mom was found at a grocery store totally abandoned with 13 other hamsters. And so since then, her siblings have all been adopted, but I think she would like to go home with somebody in Monrovia. So, oh, and while we are talking about fuzzy little creatures, I do want to remind everybody that Easter is coming, and even though you may be tempted to purchase a bunny for the kids' Easter baskets, they do require a lot of maintenance, and it's not always a great idea. They are the #1 animal that we find in our shelters in May and June just because they get too large and people try and surrender them or just take them to the park and let them go. So really think about your household and what your needs are before you look into adopting a rabbit. Have a great evening, everyone. Happy Easter, and I'll see you next month.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you, Lauren, for arranging that. Do we have our student government representative, Sophia, with us this evening?
Mayor Adams, I heard from Sophia. She didn't have any news to report. She's had a busy week, but I'm sure she hopes that there's a lot to talk about come the first week of April.
Great. Thank you so much. I'll entertain a motion on the consent calendar.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. Is there any objection? Then Alice, please call the roll.
Council members Blackburn,
Yes.
Shevlin,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Crudgington,
Yes.
and Mayor Adams.
Yes, thank you. We'll now move on to public input, and I know we have all received copies of the public input, but at this point, we'll call on the city clerk to read those into the record.
My pleasure. Our first comment comes from Carol Daly. Dear Dylan, Tom, and city council members, for months now during the pandemic, we have been limited as the public voice to only be able to send in written commentary at city council meetings. We've been told by you that is legal and okay to do. We are appealing to you to please allow our voices to be heard during the city council meetings. We did our own little survey about what other neighboring cities are doing, and we found that Arcadia, Sierra Madre, Alhambra, and Azusa have telephone public comment access during their city council meetings. Duarte and Glendora do Zoom meeting with public comment access. Thank you for your consideration of our request. Excuse me. Next we have from Brian Tyndall. Last week we lost a historic oak tree. This tree was about 60 feet tall and I'm sure older than anyone in the town. This tree was removed from the backyard of a house. The homeowner did contact the city to check for approval. Approval was granted because the tree was in the backyard, not the front yard. Oak protection is done for the preservation of healthy oak trees, which are necessary to preserve the present scenic beauty and heritage of Monrovia, maintain property values, and promote conservation of natural resources, citing Monrovia Code 17.20.040. LA County has an oak protection ordinance. It protects any oak genus without regard to its location on the property. Oaks are more important now with fire damage and the continuing drought these native trees provide habit, shade, oxygen, and erosion protecting. I spoke with many of you as I watched this tree get cut down. I was told that staff reads the code that all conditions must be met for a tree to be protected. I would like that the code to be changed so that a tree is protected if any conditions are met. Because this tree was in a backyard, it was not protected. Even though it was an oak, it was the required size and it was healthy. Thank you. Next comes from Sari Canales at the Chamber of Commerce. She lists new members as Aztec Cigar Company, My Chair by Maria, Family First Life Royalty, Law Office of Sergio Fernandez, Jason Ackerman, D. Mason Consulting, Dolce Cielo, Sumner Development, Danmar Custom Draperies, and First Church of Christ Scientist. That's 10 new members for the month of March. She asked to please check out www.shopsgv.com for businesses in Monrovia and surrounding areas. There's a ribbon cutting for Sweet Ethan's on Tuesday, March 23rd at 4 p.m. Spring planting event brought to you by Monrovia Young Professionals Thursday, April 22nd at 3 p.m. And visit the chamber website for more info. Okay. Good evening, council members and staff. My name is Rosalind Blessing, and I am the CEO president of a nonprofit organization called the Vintage Rose Women's Shelter Corp., which was established in 2008 as a grassroots and a vision. The reason for my needing to address council this evening regarding the crisis that my organization is currently dealing with dating back to previously to 2018. I have set many appointments with our city council members, starting with Assembly Member Chris Holden, headquarters in Pasadena on Rosemead Boulevard. He was in Washington at that time and gave me an appointment with his acting secretary, Terrence Williams, who referred me to the Monrovia Community Development Center, who could not accommodate my organization in any way. So I set up an appointment with Assembly Member Larry Spicer, who I was referred to by my neighbor and close associate to my family, and I, is a longtime associate with Mr. Spicer, Mr. Bruce Blunt. Mr. Blunt stated that he went to school with Mr. Spicer and referred me to go and set up an appointment to talk with him about my organization's dilemmas. The appointment with Mr. Spicer was unsuccessful, but just by wonderful chance, I happened to run into Mr. Spicer in the Pasadena DMV office. I had a brief conversation with Mr. Spicer regarding any available city-owned vacant properties or space, in which he replied that the city currently did not have funds set up for housing assistance. At one time prior to 2018, they used to have funds to where they would assist Monrovia resident homeowners with mortgage payments or first-time homeowners with closing costs and so forth. But they put a cap on the program, and the city currently is in debt to the water and power company due to the drought we had been experiencing in 2018. Well, I continued my quest to Assemblymember Grace Napolitano, headquartered in El Monte, and spoke with her head secretary, Perla Hernandez, who also sat on the YWCA Wings Board of Directors regarding Vintage Rose Organization's shelter dilemmas. Women, children who are in trauma and crisis and need temporary housing away from their abusers. That appointment was to no avail. I went to Assemblymember Judy Chu, whose headquarters in Pasadena on Lake Avenue, again to no avail. Our organization hit a wall. All our council members failed us. They all passed us along, starting from Chris Holden to Judy Chu. So today I'm here before you with a new research with our local Monrovia Police Department. In 2019, I held a Vintage Rose workshop in Duarte, California. Monrovia Detective Garcia, who I spoke with regarding information on their DV unit, who was in charge of that program. Detective Garcia stated that twice a month they have a clinical worker that comes in and handles the DV issue in that unit. So we comprised a package with all the Vintage Rose pertinent documents and brochures and walked it into the precinct, requesting to give the packet to the clinical worker, and he stated he would put it on her desk for when she returned. I never heard back from her. Living as a resident here in the city of Monrovia for going on 7 years now, and through this past year of the pandemic, I have a call log that I have in front of me today with the time, day, and all manually written of women's calls in distress dating all the way back from June 2018 until March 15, 2021. I know through frequenting Old Town Myrtle Avenue on the corner of Myrtle and Colorado at the Senior Center, where I briefly volunteered, I saw located in the back of the building several available vacant rooms behind the front office space, which could serve as an emergency temporary shelter for these women who call our DV hotline number on a daily basis for help with their very lives, fleeing from horrific abuse from their intimate partners. And all Vintage Rose can do at the time is refer them to our YWCA Wings in Covina, California. I also saw that Aztec Hotel was closed down and vacant, which also could serve as an emergency temporary shelter for these women in trauma and crisis fleeing for their lives. In closing, through the Vintage Rose fundraising phase of our development, we have raised a noticeable amount of funds, could possibly pay enough to start up or lease a facility for about 4 to 6 months. Because we are a nonprofit, our sole existence is based on charities and donations. We could not afford to pay market rent, but willing to pay for the leasing of any of the above-mentioned properties, but we don't have enough funds for the sustainability of the property and need the support and help of our community and city officials. I also have a question. What is that these properties are continued to be unoccupied, vacant, available for some large development to buy and tear it down to rebuild some large building or stores for profit? But you cannot make a profit off human lives that need your help, and for that I am responsible for. The next is from Julissa Zepeda. Good evening, everyone. My name is Julissa Zepeda, a district representative from the Office of Assemblywoman Blanca Rubio. Although I introduced myself to the council members via email, I wanted to do so again tonight. Please feel free to reach out to me for any state legislative and state agency questions or concerns. I'm happy to be of service. I look forward to continue attending council meetings virtually and anticipate the day we can all formally meet in person. The next is from Ruhia Yule to Monrovia City Council. I'm writing to express my concerns regarding the format for public input at our local city council meetings. I am aware that we are in unique times that require innovative thinking. To that end, I will assume the council quickly adapted to this virtual environment and began holding city council meetings via teleconference. As a temporary measure, you also implemented the policy of submission of public input by 5 p.m. on the day of the meeting. You also indicated that although community members' entire comments may be summarized during the meeting, the members of the council would receive the comment in full. Here are my concerns. One, I understand that temporary is my language, but I can only conclude it was temporary, as citizens are allotted specific time guidelines and are encouraged to engage their First Amendment right to voice concerns in an uncensored way to the government when we meet in person. Summarization of citizen comments leads to individual interpretation of salient ideas and the meaning of the comment itself. Under the Public Hearings and Appeals section, there is an opportunity for 10 minutes of public testimony and 5 minutes for rebuttal. It then continues to indicate that members of the public who wish to speak have a 5-minute time frame with no rebuttal time. The current format does not adequately provide for this provision. Below, she copies statements directly from the agenda, which are included online. There are many localities facilitating public comment in a manner that more faithfully reflects the principles underlying the importance of public interaction and input in matters of local government. I call on the council to immediately implement strategies that will enable community public input to happen live during the council meetings. You have the technology and the manpower. Why not use them? Respectfully, Ruhia Yule. And this actually is for item on the consent calendar. I meant to read it beforehand, but it is in support. Good evening. On behalf of the Board of MPWR and the Monrovia Parks, Wilderness, and Recreation Foundation, Inc., I'd like to thank both the city staff and city council for their dedication and support of the fantastic parks, beautiful wilderness areas, and creative recreation programs in Monrovia. The intrinsic value of these community resources has become even more abundantly clear to all of us during the COVID-19 pandemic. We look forward to continuing to work with the City Council and staff to increase resources for recreation and community programs, parks, facilities, and open spaces in Monrovia. Edward Belden, Board President, Monrovia Parks, Wilderness, and Recreation Foundation, Inc. And that concludes public input.
All right, thank you, Alice. We do appreciate everyone writing in, and I'm certain that the council will have some discussions at a future time over oral communication and how we do that. But it was interesting to hear that Mr. Spicer has been promoted up to a member of the assembly. So Larry, congratulations on that. Just, remember the little people on your way up. So congratulations. Okay, we will now move on to reports of city manager and staff. And Mr. Feek, you are up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The couple items on the directive update that I'd like to provide to you, one, and really two of them related to some comments that we received tonight. I'm going to go ahead and bring forth at our next meeting on the 6th of April, just an update into public comment options available to City Council. One of the things Monrovia did very quickly when the pandemic began was shifted to a virtual City Council meeting. That was done very early on. We're very grateful to be able to do that. And there have been updates. Many other cities have been able to provide public comment live during the meetings. And so we have some logistical things we need to work through. But between now and the next meeting, we'll identify what those issues might be and be able to report back to City Council on maybe what changes it might be willing to do down the road. And hopefully, knock on wood, that we one day soon will be able to reconvene public meetings in person again. So that's what we're certainly all optimistic for. In addition, there were comments made tonight about the oak tree preservation ordinance, which we have on the books. And I thought it might be wise to bring something to council at the next meeting, a brief, almost like perhaps even a study session, but a brief overview of the current oak tree preservation ordinance. If you remember last year, basically during the pandemic, the city started researching preservation of other types of trees on private property as well. We put that on the back burner during the pandemic, and also as we deal with more important issues like the housing element and some general plan updates that planning has been working on. But we want to make sure that the council, the community are aware of the oak tree preservation ordinance. There's a lot of misinformation that's been moving around, and we want to just make sure that the policy is there in front of us all. And if council has any direction you'd like to give to staff or research or further considerations, we'll be happy to take it at that point, or anytime, of course. Couple other items of note. One is recently we were made aware the city of Glendora is submitting a letter to the House of Representatives for an upcoming vote on H.R. 803, which is in reference to the National Recreation Area proposal that Congresswoman Chu presented back originally in 2014. There have been several different bill names, bill types. City of Monrovia has had a long-standing position for many years that we're not opposed to enhanced recreation amenities or ideas or ways that Congress can fund improvements within Angeles National Forest and the National Recreation Area. However, we've had concerns that city property and private property continue to be included within the boundaries of the proposed National Recreation Area. Ironically, Glendora has the very same concerns. Several cities do. And what I'd like to do is I've asked the city attorney if he could help draft another letter similar to the letter we drafted about a year ago, just reiterating the city's longstanding approach. It's almost the same bullet points. We're just asking that for purposes of this new legislation that they leave City of Monrovia property as well as private property outside of the National Recreation Area. We'll have a couple updates to make with various appointments and, just I'll call it representatives work to do. Gloria is the city's representative on the, Gloria, you might have to correct me, on the WASC. I don't remember what the WASC acronym stands for.
Watershed Steering Committee. It's the Rio Hondo Watershed Steering Committee.
Correct. The watershed. I couldn't remember the A, but Watershed Steering Committee for the Rio Hondo. Thank you. But Gloria is the primary, and Sean Sullivan, our Public Works Director, is the alternate. And so we're going to make some changes as we prepare for Sean's departure as our Public Works Director. So more information coming soon. Finally, the last item I'd like to share with council is that as of yesterday, there were a couple important changes to the county-wide Safer at Home order and the county health order generally. As the county now moves into the red, as we've talked about, coming out of a statewide purple tier for the region, we're moving into this, what they call a red tier, which basically means more reopenings, including some indoor reopenings for businesses. We've been promoting these on city social media, City Manager's Update, but just as a quick synopsis, restaurants are now allowed to open with a 25% indoor dining capacity. Tables have to be spaced 8 feet apart. You have to be members of the same household. They're also making a minor change to outdoor dining, where now members of up to 3 separate households can eat outdoors. Schools may now reopen for in-person instruction. There's been a lot of dialogue and discussion at the school district on how to do that. Also, even movie theaters can allow occupancy up to 25% indoors, and gyms up to 10% indoors. So as we continue transitioning even from a red tier into the next tier down, the idea is incrementally more indoor allowances will be given. Those are the highlights I'd like to share related to the movement of the tiers. Also, as of yesterday, the county and the state, but also the county specifically, opened up vaccines to people who are between the ages of 16 to 64 with health conditions. So now the Monrovians who may have a health condition within that age range can now make an attempt to get a vaccine appointment. The challenge continues to be a very short supply. And so while they open up these new tiers and these new age groups of people to go get vaccines, we just remind everyone that there's still a very limited supply. They may have to wait several times, but continue to follow the county's websites for how to receive those allocations. And I just want to point out again that the city has not received any allocations. We're continuing to try and make every attempt, but the way that the county has rolled out vaccinations, we just don't have any part in those decisions. So we're trying to get information out as quickly as we can, and we're very hopeful and optimistic that more doses will become available very soon. With that, those are my updates this evening, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Dylan. Appreciate the update. Any questions for Dylan?
I don't have a question. I was just going to comment on the LA County and the reopening. I was reading the LA County press release today, and they said if we continue on the trajectory that we are currently on, we could be hopeful to be entering the orange tier by around the 1st of April. And so, or very first part of April. So that's very, very encouraging. We need to do our job, get our vaccines, wear a mask, and stay safe in the meantime.
All right. Thank you, Dylan. Thank you, Becky. We'll now move on to RCM2. And Mr. Steele, our city attorney, will brief us on a letter of support for SB 590.
Thank you, Mr. Adams, members of the council. It is time to have yet another discussion about our local election dates based on some actions that the state legislature has taken, and also a bill that we consider to be helpful in that regard, SB 590. And if Alice is able to share some information with you,
Sorry,
I will.
We're having technical difficulties, so let me just see if hopefully I can get it open on mine. Okay. Almost there. Somewhere we are so close. Sorry, guys. I just closed some windows. There we are. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So 2 issues to talk about. The impact on the Monrovia's election date by some actions that the state legislature took 2 years ago, and also a bill that we want to talk about, SB 590. Next slide, please. Just for historical purposes and kind of a reference, this is the history of Monrovia's election dates since basically World War II. You can see there were a number, about 30 years during which the city had regular elections in April of even years, then made a move in 1974 to March of even years, back to April in 1980 through 1994. All of those were before my time, so I can't really give you the reasoning for going back, other than I think it has had something to do with the date of the statewide elections. Then in 1997, the city switched to an odd year elections in March. And most of that, actually most of the next change, the 2009 change to go back to April, was the result of an arrangement we had with the city of Arcadia, where we shared a vote counting machine and and Arcadia used it on one election date and we used it on the other election date so that the ballots could get counted back when the city was basically conducting its own elections. Then in 2017, the legislature passed SB 415, which in response to what the legislature considered to be a problem with low turnout in local elections, required cities to create a plan to move their election dates to either the statewide primary or the statewide general election dates. And as you'll recall, in 2018, you decided to make that plan of moving to the statewide primary dates, which as of that time were in March, going to be in March of 2020. So 2020, the city switched and went back to an even year election, and we held the city's first elections under this new system in March of 2020. Now, it's important to remember that when you switch elections dates, the law requires that a full cycle of elections be held before you can switch again. So we've held a partial cycle of elections. We had the mayoral election and some council seats elected in March of 2020. We're required to finish that up and hold another cycle in 2022. The problem is that after we changed to March of 2020, the legislature came forward with a different bill that changes the dates of the statewide primary depending on whether or not we're in a presidential year or not. So now in presidential election years, which are the years that are divisible by 4, the statewide primary is in March, presumably because the legislature wants to have more influence on the presidential nomination. But in the off years, as 2022 will be, the statewide primary is in June. So that means under the provision of SB 415 and the change we made in 2018, we're now required to hold our local election as we read this bill and other cities read this bill in June of 2022 instead of March as had been previously planned. The county has confirmed that they will not be conducting elections in March of 2022. And we're aware that cities are scrambling because many cities changed their elections to be in March of even years as opposed to November. So because we stuck with the primary elections and we have one more cycle of elections to go through, we're required to move our elections to the statewide primary date in June for the 2022 cycle. And that creates a host of issues, obviously, not the least of which would be extending some terms, as well as going through the whole process of changing an election date again, and potentially creating a situation where our mayoral elections, which are held every 2 years, would be held in March some years and go March to March, or go March to June essentially, and then the other years would go June to March. But that's what the legislature has given us. Next slide, please. So again, aligning with the statewide primary election means a variable election date depending on the year, but we know that the 22 regular municipal elections have to be held on the primary election date in June to comply with the other legal requirement. And the result is that in the future, if we stick with this, some terms will expire in March and some terms will expire in June. That's as we sit right now, assuming the legislature doesn't change the law again. We have gone back and looked at the staff reports and the discussions about the choice that the council made going with the primary election date. And you'll recall that there were a number of problems with either choice, a number of factors that went into it. Back in 2016, the county was still talking about not getting started yet with their conversion to a new voting system. And so they wrote a memo that came to the city council expressing concerns about ballot capacity if the elections were all consolidated in November. There were problems with potentially getting the vote counted in a timely way, as well as concerns about, frankly, getting lost in national elections and having down ballot, so to speak, elections ignored by the voters. So that was why the council made its decision then to go to March. But now we have a situation where we think we need to go to the June primary. Cities have approached the legislature about fixing this problem somehow, because there are a number of cities, including some that we represent, that are scheduled to have elections in March. But in LA County, at least, and I don't know about other counties, there's nobody to conduct the election because the consultants who used to conduct elections for cities don't exist anymore or don't do it anymore. The county has been providing all the services, and they have indicated that they will not be providing election services in March because March is not the statewide primary date anymore. Next slide, please. So one helpful piece of information is that Senator Ben Allen has introduced SB 590. SB 590 says that any term of office that is now set to expire in March or April of 2022 shall be extended to expire following the certification of election results following the June 7th, 2022 statewide primary election, which means that it's Senator Allen and the committee's view that the elections in 2022 that were supposed to be in March have to be held in June. And if this bill passes, and the senator's office indicated there's every reason to believe that it will, then those terms won't expire in March of 22. They'll expire after the election in June of 2022. One, again, complication of this is that the bill is not an urgency bill. So if it passes this session, it'll take effect January 1st. So, and January 1st, frankly, is too late to wait to change election dates because there's a whole process that has to be gone through before the nomination period opens. So after a lot of consideration and discussion, what we're recommending is that the City Council direct staff to send a letter supporting SB 590 and explaining why it's important to the City of Monrovia, and then go ahead and direct staff to prepare documents to align the 2022 regular municipal election with the June primary rather than March as it is currently scheduled. And then, frankly, after the June election, we're going to have to step back and take a look. And I think the council will have to then decide what to do going forward about election dates. And we'll have to try to get some intel as to whether the legislature is planning any further changes, because all of these changes that the legislature made in the last two sessions aren't really paying any attention to their impact on local elections. They're making decisions based on statewide political interests. So our recommendation, excuse me, is that the council direct us to send a letter in support of SB 590, and that you direct staff to start to prepare the ordinance and other documents that would be necessary to move the 2022 election to June 7th. And that concludes our report, and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Craig. Any questions of Craig?
Craig, I'm just curious. It obviously was for political reasons. I won't ask you to go into that. But why would we actually say we support 590? What we say is we disagree with the date change or the election date, but we're being forced to then extend the, I don't know, supporting it makes it sound like we're good with changing our date then to June.
Well, I certainly wouldn't. I assume I would end up drafting the letter. I wouldn't put it in those terms.
Okay, good.
I would put it in the terms of the legislature. I mean, I'll say it more politely than this, but the legislature has put us in this box because we did what the legislature not asked, but told us to do. And then another legislator came up with a different bill and sort of pulled that box out from underneath us. And now we're being forced, this isn't because Senator Allen came up with this idea on his own.
Right,
the city of
right.
Beverly Hills went to Senator Allen and asked him to carry this bill. And it's another example of how cities shouldn't have to be afterthoughts in the legislature.
Well, and I guess the argument could be made is, hey, leave it the way it was. Why can't we just leave the primaries in March? And I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, but and that may be the long-term argument, but we've been told that there's no chance of that changing now in time for 2022. And the worry, frankly, the worry is that if we're aware of cities that are scrambling to try to find ways to hold their own elections in March of 2022, and they may or may not be able, to do that. But our concern is that if we just
Right. I understand, and I liked your idea about diplomatically saying you've made this very difficult for us. Oh my goodness. Okay.
So Craig, if I understand it correctly, it sounds like as far as the mayoral terms go, you're going to have a 27-month term followed by a 21-month term, and then flipping back to a 27-month term followed by a 21-month term.
correct.
Okay.
And some council members elected in June and some council members elected in March.
Jeez.
Well, once again, it reminds me of the old Laurel and Hardy movies when Stan would look at Ollie and say, or no, Ollie would look at Stan and say, this is another fine mess you've gotten us into. So thank you, Sacramento. Any other questions for Craig? So is the general consensus to move forward with this direction?
Yes,
You don't need a vote on that, do you, Craig?
it's just direction, Mr. Mayor,
Okay.
so no.
Okay,
Yes, Tom.
okay.
Have no choice. Yeah.
I don't hear any objections. So Craig, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you moving forward on that. Okay, let me see here. We will now move on to Go Monrovia update, Mr. Feek. Did you bring your bike with you?
No, it was cold this morning. 33 degrees up at Canyon Park when we were up there doing public works crews doing some readings at the water tank. 33. It was cold. So no way I'm riding in 33-degree weather. But Tom, if you're riding, I'll come join you.
Okay.
Just a brief update for council, and I attached the memo, and really the purpose of this update is just to give you a quick bit of information about what's coming down the pipeline that you're going to be seeing on council agendas, including one item that was on the consent calendar earlier today. A lot of this work happens over multiple years, and so the work we've been doing behind the scenes, when it comes up, we just want to make sure that we're keeping it in front of city council. That way you can answer any questions. Council is fully aware of what's been going on, but we just want to share a couple updates with the public. The overview that I've prepared in your council packet includes some interesting financial information about Go Monrovia over the last fiscal year, over this current fiscal year to date. So for these last 9 months. Last fiscal year, the city ended Go Monrovia and the Monrovia Transit Program. So Go Monrovia is our partnership with Lyft. So it's again private company, public-private partnership. The popular Go Monrovia program, and then you have the Monrovia Transit Program, which is our dial-a-ride bus service. And the total cost for the fiscal year 2020 was about $1,374,000. We budgeted for this current fiscal year about $1.2 million, but because of the pandemic and the significantly reduced number of people using both Go Monrovia and Monrovia Transit, we estimate that we're going to end the year as of June 30 around $589,000 on the program. And this is all due to significantly reduced ridership. People are traveling less to those destination points, and mostly for the essential travel that they have to do, going to work, going to doctor's offices or various appointments. Certainly can use it to go to restaurants, but we've just noticed the precipitous drop. And so we do expect to end the year in the black, which is a good thing. Gives us a little bit more time to continue to watch the program, see how it does. And so up until this point, we haven't made any drastic changes. We haven't brought anything back to City Council. And so we're still going to continue on the status quo as we work our way through the pandemic. As we start to see more reopenings, go from a red tier to an orange tier and so on and so forth, we're going to be monitoring this closely. We get monthly ridership updates. We're reviewing as staff, and when it comes time to bring something to City Council and talk about, changes or going back to when Lyft says they can do shared rides now, or we see more, openings, we're going to be bringing back those recommendations to council somewhere down the road. But at this point in time, we feel comfortable to let the program work as it is. We're dealing with, onesie, twosie questions, concerns that come up. But a key point here is that the ridership is down significantly, but that's resulting in the program being in the black for the very first time.
Dylan,
Yes.
Dylan, do we have the ridership number on those?
It's not in this current memo, but I will provide the most recent ridership numbers, but they're down considerably, hovering around 5,000 riders per month, which at its peak was 80,000 riders per month. So
I guess what initially the cost per the Go Monrovia or the Lyft program was way under what the Monrovia Transit per trip. A Monrovia Transit trip is exceedingly expensive. So if the ridership is down, I'm assuming that price even went up, even more per trip.
Because I don't have the numbers in front of me, we'll get them tomorrow, and I'll send them to the council in an update, and we'll provide an update as well. We'll give this information to the city manager's update. So we'll include some of that information. But I would imagine you're correct that the cost per rider would go up a little bit.
Okay, thanks.
One of the efforts we've been undertaking for a while has been integrating the Monrovia Transit Program into the Go Monrovia platform. And so we've been asking our two partners, Lyft, as well as Empire, which helps dispatch and service the Monrovia Transit Program, to basically integrate so that we have a Go Monrovia platform, which is again a Lyft application, but also the dial-a-ride program, Monrovia Transit, is also integrated in that as well. So you can use Go Monrovia, you can use an app, but you can use the Parrot Transit service as well as the standard Go Monrovia service. So it's taken some time because this is a pilot program. We're one of the first to do it, if not the first. And so it just takes time to work out kinks and bugs with various partners. We're certainly quick to respond, but it takes a lot of time for Empire and Lyft to get people talking and get contracts in place, agreements, software, all that good stuff. Soon we'll be bringing a couple different transportation grants to City Council for your consideration and approval. One of them is called the Metro 5310 grant, which was designed to fund enhancements and improvements for public transit, specifically to benefit seniors, persons living with disabilities. The Go Monrovia program was a perfect fit for this, and this is one of the ways we're going to help fund the transition of moving Monrovia Transit over onto the LIFT platform. It's about a $600,000 grant, which we have to use within the next couple of years, and I'll talk in a minute about when you'll be seeing that in front of the council. Another grant we received was the Southern California Association of Governments Future Communities Pilot Program. This was designed to provide cities and counties with resources needed to reduce emissions, emissions provided by vehicle miles traveled reductions. So using new technology, new solutions to try and reduce the number of vehicle miles traveled out on the street. We've had a couple different ways we were going to use this money, but one of the creative ways we're going to try and kind of pivot after the pandemic is we're preparing what's called a Ride to Own Bicycle Pilot Program, which includes dedicated bike programs for residents, commuters, restaurants, delivery services, bike shops. It could be used for anything. The whole concept here is allow people to purchase bicycles and get a reimbursement through the grant. So this wouldn't be like a Lime bike where the city's acquiring, owning, or purchasing. There's different San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments programs to do, bike programs. What we're trying to do is basically use the grant to help pay to reimburse people for getting new bicycles and using them. They have to identify, here's how I'm going to use it, here's why, I want to commute to work, I want to do this. It's going to be open for if you're a senior, if you're a youth, if you're just a commuter who wants a new bike to be able to travel back and forth to work. This grant is going to be available to help people cover the cost of getting those bikes, as well as safety equipment. Want to make sure they can get helmets. We'll be doing some outreach. So it's something that even the Council of Governments is very interested in seeing how we roll this out and how successful we can make it. So we're excited to try that. And that grant money has to be spent within the next couple of years as well.
Dylan, you say that there are other things that we could spend the money on. What were some of the other things that could be used on other than purchasing bikes?
So originally, when we applied for the grant, the idea was we needed money to subsidize or cover the cost of the Go Monrovia program. And we were thinking, are there ways we can further subsidize? We thought about, could we use it to subsidize trips up to Canyon Park and to access recreation areas? Could we use it for just specifically for commuter and workforce? Working with SCAG has been tough because they're even trying to figure out how does the program result in less vehicle miles traveled on the streets. It's hard to demonstrate. It's hard to prove that, and they have a preference for things like bike and alternative means of transportation. So we certainly could look at other alternative ways to spend the money. We've spent a lot of time doing that. I think one of the issues we're all starting to bump up into is they have a timeline for when they spend this money, and so we've gone back and forth, and I think they're even finally saying, "Hey, we got to get moving on this stuff." So,
and I'm sorry, Ben. It's obviously it's a reprogramming of the money then that we had thought we'd use for Go Monrovia. So how much then are we reprogramming for this particular program?
This grant is going to be around $300,000, and specifically, this money was really, again, this is how to reduce vehicle miles traveled was all about ride sharing. It was all about getting multiple people to share vehicles, and that's been strictly prohibited during the pandemic. And so, that was kind of one of the key drivers that forced us to think a little bit differently about how we want to spend this money.
A lot of money on bikes.
The kind of the final item before I give you kind of an upcoming timeline is City Attorney's Office has been very helpful. If the council remembers, we received a letter from the Department of Justice some time ago looking at how our LIFT program operates and the services it provides, wanting to make sure that all Monrovians, including persons with disabilities, receive standards of service that are equal across the board. We've constantly been trying to identify ways to move Monrovia Transit onto our platform, which was, I think, a real key discussion point as we talked with the Department of Justice through this, making sure that we're providing equitable services. And so we expect that the Department of Justice, which has already sent a draft for the city attorney to review, is going to ask for what we'd call a non-punitive settlement agreement, which basically says, hey, we received a complaint or a concern, or we reviewed this program with the city of Monrovia, and here's what the city said it's going to do, and the agreement basically helps ensure that we do those things that we said we're going to do. And so there will be something coming to the council in the near future related to that item as well. Finally, tentative schedule for you in the next couple months. Tonight, you approved the First Amendment to what we call the Metro Incentive Grant CARES Act Fund acceptance. But before you, beginning in April, on the April 20th meeting, we anticipate bringing the SCAG Future Communities Pilot MOU program, which is the bike acquisition program. Also, the Metro 5310 agreement. Again, those will be, we anticipate, both on the second meeting in April. As part of those agreements, we'll need to amend our agreement with Empire Transportation just to ensure that they're rolling their Monrovia Transit operations into our Go Monrovia platform. And then finally, on May 4th, the update for the LA County Paratransit Agreement, which is a slightly separate agreement, but affecting paratransit services not included under Go Monrovia or the Monrovia Transit Program. So it's a lot to take in and to digest. Should you read the memo, have other additional questions, feel free to reach out. I'll make sure and provide some of the update on the metrics that Becky had asked about in a future update I send to the community as well as the city council. Be happy to answer any additional questions you might have.
Thank you, Dylan. Any questions for Dylan? Okay, we will move on to our reports to city council members, and we'll start with Mr. Spicer. You're muted, Larry. You have to unmute yourself.
I got you.
There you go.
So I don't have a report, but I just want to give accolades out to our community services for their accomplishment during the 2020 year. The key milestones that they've accomplished, whether it was the Lucinda Garcia grant, when we had to shut down, when they launched the Monrovia Strong Employee Wellness Program, the reservation system, just all the different things that community services does. I just want the commission to know that the community appreciate all the work that they put into the city. And they have, if you can see the list that I have of their short-term initiatives, their action, staff action items, their tracking items, just 2 pages of work. And it just lets you know how much work that the community, that our commission puts into the community. And I just want them to know how much we appreciate it.
Thank you,
And
Larry.
that's it for me, Tom.
I'm sure they appreciate hearing that. Thank you so much. Next up, we've got Mayor Pro Tem Credgington. And Gloria, you're muted.
There we go.
There you go.
Just in brief, been up to my earlobes in stormwater. Tracking a lot of things. There are a lot of things in process, but we're in the middle of that legislative season where things are going on, and we're testifying and up in Sacramento. But no results as of the moment, and I'll keep you all posted.
All right. Thank you so much. And stay healthy.
Thank you.
Uh, Councilmember Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Over the past year, I was the City Council's liaison to the Community Services Commission. And during that time, I started working with Community Services staff on the development of a plan to implement a dog park in town, which is something that a lot of people in town have wanted for a long time. So today I have Community Services Director Tina Cherry, who is here with us on this meeting to present our preliminary location and design idea and answer any questions that the City Council may have.
Welcome, Tina.
Thank you, Mr. Adams and members of the council, and thank you for the opportunity to present on a proposed dog park here in Monrovia. We're really excited about the possibilities. Let's go on here. Hold, please. There we go. So just as by way of background, the dog park was identified as a priority in the 2018 Park Master Plan that we adopted. And then this year, as you just heard of during the consent item, that we did have a newly formed foundation here in Monrovia, the Monrovia Parks Wilderness Recreation and Foundation. And that foundation is really looking to fund projects that contribute to the implementation of the items identified within the Park Master Plan. So it made sense that this might be a good time to start studying the idea of a dog park here in Monrovia. So in partnership with Councilmember Blackburn, staff has been working on really just some preliminary groundwork. We have not solicited public input. We have not done any community feedback. We've really just been doing a lot of research to better inform ourselves. We did look at all of the city's existing parks to see if there was any suitable location for a dog park. We also engaged a landscape architect to help us really assess our options and look at some best practices. In addition to that, we did visit some of the neighboring community parks. We went to Pasadena, South Pasadena, Sierra Madre, and Arcadia, just really to better inform ourselves and gain some additional knowledge. And based on all of that research, we identified Recreation Park as a possible suitable location for the proposed dog park. And really, there were two factors that jumped out to us. One was that Rec Park is centrally located in Monrovia. It's a well-established and large facility. And every time we go there, it's always filled with lots of dog lovers. Folks are there walking their dogs, socializing their dogs, exercising their dogs. So it definitely is a place where dog lovers are currently going. The proposed design that we've been working on has really been simple and cost-effective. We're looking at 3/4 of an acre of open space. There would be two separate locations, one for small dogs and one for large dogs. The plan does include ADA accessibility, proper drinking fountains for both humans and pets, trash receptacles and muttments. And then one of the other factors that's truly important is it would have a secured secondary entrance gate to protect animals as they come and go from the park. Now, the estimate for this proposed design is $100,000, which doesn't sound cost effective, but when you compare that to a full ground-up construction of over $500,000, this definitely may be a more cost-effective alternative. So here's a site plan of the proposed location that we've been studying. This is an area of turf at Recreation Park, just south of Lemon Avenue, in between the Historic Museum and the Santa Anita Family YMCA. Essentially, the project would use the existing turf and would propose a gate that would section off the entire dog park and then section off the large dog area from the small dog area. In addition, on the east edge of the park, we would propose enhancing some parking to meet ADA requirements, so those needing ADA assistance could access the dog park. It would include a sidewalk to get folks to the entrance, and then the gated entrance, as I mentioned earlier, is the secondary security location. So should this be a project that the City Council wish to explore further, there's certainly some possible next steps for your consideration. We could start engaging the public through community meetings, whether that be neighborhood or community meetings, stakeholder meetings. There's lots of folks who use Recreation Park. We'd want their input, and possibly engage the Community Services Commission and get their input on this proposed project. Another step may be to start soliciting grant funds for this project, or identify other funding partners, possibly Empower would be interested in this proposed project. So with that, that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I look forward to hearing your feedback.
Any questions of Tina?
Ina, do you know, you said 3/4, I'm really bad of acre. I'm kind of bad on spatial, knowing how big that is. How large is the dog park? Do you know at Eisenhower Park in Arcadia?
Oh, I don't have that in front of me. I do have it in my notes, but I don't have it here in front of me. But essentially, we'd be looking at encompassing that upper turf area in between the museum and the YMCA. So if you kind of think about where Monrovia Reeds used to park their bus at the Spring Egg Hunt, it's in general in that area.
Right. Now, because the Arcadia one is rather small. I'm thinking the one in Arcadia is less than 3/4 of an acre. I'm thinking.
It might be very comparable. Most dog parks are about an acre. The one in Pasadena is much larger, but it's in an SCE right away.
Right, right. And it has been a long time. I know that's been, when I was a community services commissioner, we talked a lot about dog parks. So it has been on the wish list for a long time. Thanks for your report. Thanks, Alex.
You're welcome.
Any other questions of Tina?
Tina, when I was on the Community Services Commission, we did study it before. We went all around locally and into Hollywood. My recollection of it is that there are much more water requirements, because part of keeping unwanted odors away is to water it a lot. Are we taking the cost of that water into consideration? Or any possible replumbing to accommodate more in that area and less in the rest of Recreation Park?
That's a really good point. The proposed budget is just for the construction. It does not include any of the operating expense. Drainage and water is something that needs to be considered with the ongoing maintenance. We do not propose making any adjustments to the existing irrigation. It would be using the existing turf and the existing irrigation. We certainly know that a dog park does come with its own policies and rules, and we definitely would want to study operating guidelines and some policies that we would want to adopt. And part of that might be to rest the park on occasion so we can get the proper drainage and we do maintain it in a responsible way.
My concern, obviously, is being a good neighbor to the Historical Museum and the Y, who wouldn't appreciate us if dog urine smells were drifting over the breeze into the neighbors on both sides. So I'd like to make sure that before we proceed, we're really looking at what it's going to cost maintenance-wise, because I have a feeling that's going to be a big factor.
Well, I think the next step is to do further study, as opposed to the next step being implementation. I certainly think that we would need to reach out to people who live in that neighborhood, as well as the YMCA and those who utilize the Historical Museum.
And the Community Services Commission. They need to be consulted as well.
Right. Sure.
Okay, a great start. Alex, do you have anything else for your report? We appreciate you bringing that forward.
Well, I think we need to give Tina some direction on what to do here, as opposed to just, saying thank you for the report and moving on. Do we want to give her direction to do what she's, recommended as next steps, which is essentially to do outreach?
Is that your wish?
That's my preference, yes.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think the more we can look at this kind of thing, the better off and smarter we will be. But it's definitely an idea that has been around for a long time, and Monrovians have been asking for it for a long time. I appreciate you bringing that forward, but I don't hear any objection to the concept. So if there is no objection, then our direction to Tina will be to move forward and see what it's going to take.
Thank you, Mayor Adams.
You bet. Thank you for bringing that forward, Alex. Great idea. Anything
pleasure.
else?
Not for me, no.
Okay. Thank you, sir. We'll now move on to Councilmember Shevlin.
Thank you. And I also want to echo the comments of Councilman Spicer and Councilman Blackburn about staff, community services and library, both, well, all staff have done a great job, but I know that especially community services and the library have been really challenged because they have so much programming, or they're continuing to, they're trying to continue giving services to the, providing services and programs to the community. I think they've done an excellent job. So ditto on that, or comments. I did want to give a shout out to a gal named Allison Ferrari. She posted on Nextdoor.com and she took it upon herself to watch the rainbow steps in Grand Avenue Park, Kiwanis Grand Avenue Park. And they were really dingy, and with all the ash and everything that rained down and whatnot. And she watched this, and they're beautiful. She posted a picture and they're beautiful. And I just want to again say thank you, Allison. Great job. And thank you for thinking of your community. That was really nice of you. Did want to point out that tomorrow, St. Patrick's Day, the Santa Anita Family YMCA is having a blood drive. We celebrated Red Cross earlier in our meeting. And I wanted to mention then it's tomorrow, the 17th, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And you can go on www.redcrossblood.org, redcrossblood.org, and you can see what times are available and set up a time to go over to the YMCA and give some blood on St. Patrick's Day. Also wanted to highlight, they're talking about programming and whatnot. Again, our Monrovia Today is available online. It's really neat, and you can even use the little feature where it sounds like you're actually flipping pages. It's kind of neat. And we have everything from the Yes Intern program that's look for applications that should be out by the end of March. And there's a phone number listed, the community services number listed. You can call to get your questions answered. And then the spring stop and hop, traditionally we have our egg hunt. That is on April 3rd, Saturday, April 3rd from 9 to 3. And it's going to be kind of a drive-through thing, but it's you have to register. Space is limited, so check that out. Arbor Day registration will be on April 1st, and for a program that will happen later on. And then also our boards and commissions, we've been talking about that. Applications for boards and commissions will be due by May 3rd, and you can call the city clerk's office 932-5550. And those are for appointments that will begin on July 1st, but the applications will be due by May 3rd. Let me see, I've got notes all over here. I know I'm missing something here. I wanted to say, of course, happy St. Patrick's Day tomorrow. Happy Easter on Sunday, the 4th. And I also want to echo Tom's comments regarding Hector. It was a very nice service today, and it was very nice that they included us, gave us the opportunity to say goodbye to just a wonderful public servant. So Hector, we love you, we'll miss you, and that is all I have. Thank you.
Okay. The only other thing I was going to add is just some more kind words about Hector Elizalde. It was quite an experience today. I've never been at at a memorial service where we had a member of Congress and a brigadier general speaking. Hector will most certainly be missed. Thank you. Okay, we will move on now to administrative reports. And AR1, Tina Cherry, you're back. We have a review of the Monrovia Old Town Advisory Board discussion and merchant survey. It's all yours.
Tom, I am really sorry. The things that were on the agenda, see, I was too busy talking about other things. Alice sent me a text and I did not cover my items that are actually on the agenda. And I will be exceedingly brief, but I need direction on those, and I apologize.
Okay, Tina, you're on hold now. And Becky, you're back up.
Yes, okay. Under my agenda item, and I was asking for the recommended action before the COG is to adopt a resolution to support Senate Bill 15, sponsored by Senator Portantino, to provide state grant incentives for cities to rezone idle big box retail sites or commercial shopping centers to accommodate workforce multifamily housing. And there was a report in your agenda packet regarding that. I'm not going to read the whole bill, but this essentially would allow cities to receive the average of the annual amount of sales tax revenue generated by the big box retail or commercial shopping center site for the previous 7 years. And it does get reduced under certain circumstances if it's a mixed use, part residential, part commercial. But what I'm looking for from the council here is direction if they so desire to support that bill.
Go for it.
Okay.
It looks like you've got unanimous support from the council, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
There's a support, then the recommendation is to support Senate Bill 765, Stern and Friedman. This regards setbacks for accessory dwelling units. A support would be to authorize local governments to determine side and rear setbacks for accessory dwelling units subject to certain conditions. And it's not, you don't have full authority, but if the local agency setback requirements make the building of an ADU infeasible, for instance, due to topographical restrictions, an applicant could submit a request to the local agency for an alternative rear and side yard setback. Setback requirements would be prohibited from being greater than those in effect by the local agency as of January 1st, 2020, and would remain at 4 feet for agencies that did not have an ADU ordinance in place, which we do. So I'm asking for direction on that and whether we would support Senate Bill 765.
What are you and the COG recommending on that?
To support it.
Go for it.
Okay, and then this one, and I believe this is the same one, and I should have looked it up. This is what you, Gloria, had talked about before, and it was coming before your Water Policy Committee. And on at the March 9th, 2021, March 9th, 2021, the Water Policy Committee and Water Technical Advisory Committee voted to recommend to the governing board that we oppose the bill. And that is
we already gave direction on that.
right. That was for you. It's now being voted on, so I will take that as further. That's a done
Go for
deal.
it.
I'm opposing that. And then finally, and this was more of an update, I don't believe there'll be any objection to this, but the COG is requesting approval for support letters to congressional funding requests for regional priority projects, programs. There was also, that was included in the agenda packet. There are 5 projects listed. Each, the amount requested is $10 million. And those locations are various cities: City of Diamond Bar and Industry, City of Industry and Unincorporated Los Angeles County, City of Montebello, and City of Pomona. And this goes to, the background is, after suspending the practice for about 10 years, congressional leaders have recently announced a return to the process of permitting U.S. representatives and senators to request federal funding for priority community projects located in their districts or states. And so such funding on nominations are, of course, no guarantee of funding. Congressional representatives will determine which, if any, nominated projects or programs and requested amounts are forwarded for consideration by congressional committees, with projects then included in legislation subject to congressional approval. And while staff is gathering information, we expect nomination forms to be required to be returned by the end of March. So that's coming up very quickly. And so we are asking that the COG staff is asking for approval from the governing board for permission to send our support for these letters to congressional, for congressional funding.
So we're being asked to recommend that our Congress representatives actually do their jobs and bring us money
send us
from the
money.
federal government.
Yes.
I thought they were, I thought they just approved $1.9 trillion of money they're going to give us.
Yeah.
And now you're complaining that it's not enough?
Earmarks.
Oh,
Bring 'em
okay.
back.
That's what
I just wanted to make sure I understood it.
Yeah,
That's all.
that's what these are.
Okay.
And so these are all projects that have been in the pipeline. There's nothing new about any of these. And so
I want stormwater infrastructure money from Grace. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. And I'm sorry for that. So very sorry about that oversight on my my report. Sorry about that.
So we're
And
good?
Tina, yeah, we're good.
Thank you, Becky.
Thank you.
Okay, Tina, you're back up now. And I promise this time we'll let you finish.
Thank you, Mr. Adams and members of the council. I appreciate it. So tonight for your review, we have a report on the possibility of transitioning MOTAP from 5 to 7 members. We did some survey work, and we just wanted to report back to the council the work that we've done thus far. Sorry. There we go. So just to give you some background, back on December 1st of 2020, the City Council reviewed a recommendation to fill a vacant seat on MOTAB. And during that discussion, Mayor Pro Tem Crudgington recommended that staff consider looking at expanding MOTAB, really with an effort to support struggling businesses out of the pandemic. So following that, on January 19th, the staff provided a study session for City Council's consideration and provided additional insight as to what your options may be. We did discover that you can amend the number of seats on MOTAB from 5 to 7 by amending an ordinance. We also looked at all the other existing boards and commissions, and majority of the boards do have 7 members. The one other exception is the library board. They have 5 members, and that's really restricted based on the California Education Code. We also provided information on the historic look back for the last 10 years, just to give you some perspective as to how many applicants we received for each recruitment and the number of seats that were available. So during that meeting, the City Council made a decision that they would hold off on actually making a determination to expand MOTAB or not until they had a chance to hear from merchants and specifically MOTAB. So the City Council directed staff to go ahead and do some outreach to the merchant community and get more information. So City staff developed a survey and requested feedback via email. A survey was sent out to over 180 merchants within the Business Improvement District. The survey went out on February 5th and again on February 12th. We received a total of 21 responses to that survey. 19 of those were through the SurveyMonkey format, and 2 were actual emails that were sent directly to staff. We just wanted to give you a snapshot on the findings from that survey. the first question we asked is, do you feel that the Monrovia Old Town Advisory Board member sufficiently meets the needs of the Business Improvement District? It was really split. We ended up seeing that 56%, about 56%, did believe that the 5 members are currently meeting the needs of the Business Improvement District. The second question we asked is, do you feel expanding MOTAB membership will have a positive impact on the bid? And we did get a little bit more of a positive response to this question. We ended up with 68% reporting yes, that they did think that increasing the number of members to 7 would have a positive impact on the bid. The third question we asked was, by having additional MOTAB members, do you believe it will aid in the reopening efforts following COVID? And again, this was really split. Most folks did not think that it would have a positive impact on the reopening, but it was kind of 50-50. It was 53% felt that it would not have an impact. We also wanted to get an idea on how many folks have thought about applying for MOTAB. So we asked, have you considered applying for MOTAB? We did see that 65% of those surveyed did say yes, that they had thought about applying. And then we asked, would you actually apply? And that was interesting because we had less of a positive response here. We actually saw that 53% said that they would not apply for the membership. But I think the most compelling information we received was just the actual testimonials that folks submitted to us. So we just wanted to share with you some of the comments we received in support, and then some of those that were not supporting the expansion. So first, those looking to support the expansion of MOTAB. The first comment was, I think adding members to the advisory board is a good idea. The more representation from different businesses will ensure the needs of the downtown will be met. The Old Town of today is drastically different from the Old Town of even 20 years ago. As the business community continues to evolve, the representation should as well. The second comment was, the larger the representative body is, the better. It will make to ensure that all different types of businesses have their voices heard. I think 2 additional great candidates would benefit our post-COVID efforts. 7-person board will allow for a broader outreach to all of the Old Town merchants, and 7 members provides more diversity on the board. And the comments that we received in support of not expanding MOTAB included, I'm old-fashioned, keep it the same. I believe the mix we currently have is great. We have a restaurant, a real estate agent, a small business, and a business on a side street. And then I don't think it matters if it's 5 or 7. What matters is the quality of the board members. You have a hard enough time filling the 5 seats. Expanding it to 7 will be hard if you can even do it. Just having 7 for the sake of 7 is not worth the effort to change the number. But if you're going to expand it to 7 people that care about Old Town as well, as a whole, rather than just their own business interest, then expand it. And the neutral comments we wanted to share, one was most merchants don't know what MOTAB is or does, so we have work to do there. But the other comment was from Sari Canales from the Chamber, so we thought it was important to include in here. It is difficult to encourage people to submit an application. I believe some business owners do not want to take part in MOTAB because they feel their business will be singled out and looked at differently by the city or the community if they speak up. As the chamber representative, I believe it's the right time to speak up. The board members should represent not only their business, but their neighbors, and really need to take time to come up with solution. Observation. There are 3 board members from the 400 block, 1 from the 500 block, and 1 from Colorado. There is no representation from the 600 block, Olive, Lemon, Lime, nor Palm. I understand that there cannot be representative from each block, but it would be good to have each board member reach out to a specific location. Also, maybe the representative from a personal care business. So we took all this feedback to MOTAB at their February 16th meeting, provided them the feedback on the survey and the comments that we shared with you tonight. And most of the members and most of the merchants attending that meeting were really indifferent. There wasn't a strong feeling one way or the other. The discussion really circled around the quality of the candidates, really focusing on folks who could give of time and could think about the betterment of the bid was important. there was a request to see if the ordinance could be crafted in a way to allow us for up to 7 members and no fewer than 5. And I believe the council had that same thought during your last study session. So taking that all into account, for your consideration tonight, staff has presented 4 options. We can look to amend the municipal code contained in the ordinance to allow to expand MOTAB to 7 members. We can make an amendment to have an odd number of members, not to exceed 7, but no less than 5. Or we can not approve the amendment and give staff additional direction, or you can take no action. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and I look forward to your feedback.
Thank you, Tina. Any questions of Tina?
I don't have any questions. I just have the same concern as I did last time. Historically, it has been really difficult to get people to volunteer to take on or to be on MOTAB. And I'm just concerned if you made it 7 period, that it would be very difficult, or if you had 7 people and maybe some of them wouldn't really be appropriate for the MOTAB board. Just because you apply for something doesn't make you the best choice. So if you were going to do a compromise, the odd number, a minimum of 5, no more than 7, but it had to be the odd number, I guess you could look at that as a compromise. But I am concerned about getting enough people to volunteer to apply. Every time it comes around here, it seems like there's a real push to try to get people to apply. And in some years, it's been very hard to get a minimum of even 5. So my comment.
Well, it was interesting, some of the comments that wanted us to focus more on quality rather than quantity.
Right.
Tina, at the MOTAB meeting this morning, there was at least one person who has a new business that hasn't even opened yet. I thought there might be more. Do you have any idea how many new people showed up?
For the meeting this morning, I think it was just the 1 new member.
Well, I'm under the impression, based on Sari's comments at the meeting and in general, that we have a very big turnover of businesses happening in the downtown, which I'm concerned that I believe we can get 7. I am hoping we're going to be able to enlist some of these new people in their energy. This is all hands on deck. Bringing that downtown back up to speed is going to take a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of energy, and some fresh ideas. And we've had problems filling other, just the planning commission. We extended the search period to do some footwork and encourage some people to join. As the liaison, I really want to encourage us to move ahead with. My preference would be 7, up to 7 as a compromise.
Gloria,
Sorry.
I'll be real quick, Alex. I think Alex, though, and Larry and Tom and I both, all of us have served as liaisons on that committee. And I think MOTAB does a great job as a committee, but the participation from the businesses has always been either they don't attend the meetings and participation is very low, good or bad times.
You know, I've asked several small business owners on Myrtle Avenue over the years, pre-pandemic, why don't you get more involved in this? And the answer has always been the same. I'm too busy running my business to go down and participate in regular meetings. And I think that's going to be the challenge forever. This is entirely different. Number one, it's during the day. And I'm not suggesting we change the time, but small business owners have their hands full as it is. And so many of them don't want to. And I have to congratulate those who are on that board that are willing to, because they spend a lot of their own time away from their business. And there's a few of them over there that, you know, they're not doing it to promote themselves. They're doing it for the love of community. And I think that, again, if you go back to quality over quantity, I think we can hit the mark on it. But Larry, I think you were starting to say something.
I'm all for the 7, no less than 5, because, you know, we have a lot of shops open and we don't know who might move in there. And they might want to get involved. They might want to just jump in there and get involved. So if we change the ordinance to 7, but no less than 5, so we just leave it open, you know, whether we can get the 7 or not.
Yeah, so I support, thank you. I support increasing it to 7 for a couple of reasons. One, that's consistent with what we do on pretty much every other board, the Planning Commission, the Community Services Commission, those are all 7. And I don't see any reason to deviate from that standard of practice here. The idea that we may not get 7 people to fill the seats, so what? So you authorize 7, if you don't get 7, so what? You have 5 or you have less. You only have to appoint as many qualified applicants as you have available. There's no harm to authorizing 7, but getting fewer than 7. So what authorizing 7 does is it creates an opportunity for more small businesses to have a say in how their business improvement district funds are deployed. It also might help solve that problem that we saw come up in the survey, which is that a lot of businesses apparently in downtown don't know what MOTAB is or does. Well, the more people you get involved in MOTAB, or the more opportunity you get for businesses to get involved in MOTAB, the less likely it is that businesses won't know what MOTAB is or does. So I don't see any downside to upping it to 7. I see upside, so why not do it?
And we do have an opportunity after the pandemic to keep using Zoom to make it easier for business owners to attend those meetings. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm going to a heck of a lot more meetings than I normally do because I don't have to drive my car around to them, which is also good for the environment, I might add. But I think people are willing to attend more meetings with Zoom. And I think that's going to persist.
You know, I don't know if the downtown merchants post-pandemic are going to be reluctant to walk 2 blocks to go to a meeting. This is not driving across the county to a meeting or some of the other things that we do. These are people that have a business right on Myrtle Avenue or just off of Myrtle Avenue going over to City Hall. I think that any of them that want to know about MOTAB could attend. Don't confuse attending the meeting so your voice is heard with sitting on the board.
Oh, no, there's
Because
plenty
the
to
MOTAB
do.
meeting is open to all merchants.
And many hands make work.
98% of those merchants choose not to go. And they choose not
Tom,
to
what's
go.
the downside
They
of
choose,
raising
please,
it to 7?
Gloria, please let me finish. They choose not to go because they're too busy running their business. Small business owners have their hands full. And when you see that 98% of them don't come to a meeting, that's because they think everything is okay enough. It may not be exactly what they want, but it's okay enough.
I don't think you're going to see a lot of happy people at the moment.
A lot of happy people?
Yeah.
I don't see what happiness has to do with what we're discussing.
Well, I think change comes out of times of distress, and we're about to come out of one, which means there is a lot of opportunity to look at what works and what doesn't work. And after what's happened with the pandemic and the distancing rules and the closure rules, if I were a betting woman, I'd bet you we're going to have a lot more interest in self-governance to the degree that they can. And that this gives them one other place to talk.
Well, I think we're all interested in more self-governance. The unfortunate part is the state of California and LA County won't let us self-govern. So anyways, would someone like to make a motion?
Yes. Looks like there's enough consensus on the up to 7, odd, no less than 5, and keeping the odd number.
Option 2.
So Gloria's motion is no less than 5, no more than 7, keeping an odd number. Larry has seconded that. Is there any other discussion?
I just wanted to ask, since you brought up the Zoom meetings, Craig, do you have any comment on that? Has there been a determination that we're going to be able to continue on with the Zoom meetings? And maybe we can discuss
My knowledge,
this after.
to my knowledge, there hasn't been any discussion about what happens after the emergency. As long as the emergency is in effect, we can use the electronic meetings.
Okay, and thank you. And I did want to comment, and when you talk about what's, people don't understand what MOTAB is about, that really their responsibilities are restricted to the bid and monitoring the monies that are collected and whatnot, and then any other direction that city council gives them. So I think we could really do a better job at making sure they all know what exactly it is that their responsibilities are as a MOTAB member. So.
Well, we can share information.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we can make them know what it is. But
Well, that's
can
true.
try.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
because
I just wanted-
I know a lot of people have gone door to door to every single business
yeah.
in town
Oh, yeah.
and given them more than enough information to keep themselves informed. And quite honestly, some of these folks are just too darn busy.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the pandemic. They're just busy running their business.
Yeah.
Anyways, so we have a motion and a second to go with the no less than 5, no more than 7 odd number scenario. Is there any other discussion on this? Alice, please call the roll.
Just for the record, Alice, before you do that, that's version 2 that's in the council packet.
Yes, thank you.
Council members Blackburn,
Yes.
Shevlin,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Crutchington,
Yes.
and Mayor Adams.
Yes, thank you. Okay, good discussion. Thank you
I
all.
just need to read that, Mayor. It's ordinance.
Oh,
number
I'm sorry, yes.
2021-03, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Monrovia, California, amending section 5.36.120 of the Monrovia Municipal Code to amend the required number of members on the Monrovia Old Town Advisory Board.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to AR2, the design and installation of the Huntington Drive Entry Monument Project in an amount not to exceed $204,000. Craig Jimenez, you're up. Welcome.
Here. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm very pleased to be here tonight to give you an overview and the proposal for the Huntington Drive entry monuments. Now, as the council is well aware, the city's been contemplating new entry monuments for many years, and the existing ones, or should I say the existing one, they've been up since the last millennium, and they've served the city very well, but really are ready to be retired. This is the West Huntington entry. Before it had its rehabilitation a few years ago, sandblasted redwood is not meant to be is not meant to last forever. But, you know, they were around for about almost 40 years. Excuse me. Both of them were refurbished a few years ago, and they did look better, but again, it was a temporary measure. This is the West Huntington Drive corner at 5th and Huntington. The council probably recalls when the Arium project was under construction, the developer approached the city and wanted to do an improvement at that corner. There were a lot of challenges, and so in the end, they ended up giving the city $131,000. This was their art fee, and so they paid in lieu to satisfy that art requirement. They did ask that when the city spent that money, that it be spent to improve this corner. And so through various discussions with the city council, the Art and Public Places Committee and staff, we tossed around a lot of different ideas. And then we came up, you know, I think kind of collectively, like, well, we've got a great statement down at Station Square. So these were put into Station Square when all those improvements were done in conjunction with the Gold Line coming to town. And so this really proved to be a great inspiration and helped kind of solidify that design and the direction we wanted to go. It's a very simple but elegant statement. So what we did was take a lot of those elements and incorporate them into a new design proposal. And there's been a couple different iterations of this, but this incorporated, again, additional comments from the committee and from the city council. And this was reviewed by the Art and Public Places Committee at a meeting at the end of February, and then another meeting on March 1st. The committee was very pleased with the signage, the base, the design, the leaf motifs, but they did have a lot of concerns about the structures that were being proposed to house the service club emblems. So they recommended that component be tabled since it wasn't imperative to the design concept, and then brought back at some time in the future some different designs because they were very, very concerned about they didn't like them. So what they moved forward to the council was consideration of the signage and the base. So the sign is a steel sign. They're individual letters. They're 1 inch thick. They'll be painted white, and then they'll sit on a precast concrete base that's 2 feet high, and then that will have a concrete cap. The base will be an off-white, and then the cap will be tan. So it'll be a nice subtle contrast between the two, and then the sign will sit on top of that. The West Huntington Drive monument will be an overall height of about 5 feet 2 inches. And it will be surrounded by 3 of these leaf motifs. And the leaves are made out of Corten steel, and then they'll be attached to steel rebar. So there's one will be on the left, one will be on the right, and then one will be kind of offset in front. And then on East Huntington Drive, it'll be very similar, although it'll be scaled down to be appropriate for that particular size. This will be in the median, so there's less real estate to work with. So this, the base will be the same, the cap will be the same. The cap also has a bull nose, so a very nice clean finish on that. And then the sign will be, the letters will be 1 foot 9 inches tall, and so the overall height here will be just about 4 feet. And then there'll be 2 of the leaf motifs, one in front, which will be will be smaller than the other ones, and then the larger one, which will be the same size as the one on West Huntington Drive. So the overall budget, the requested budget is $204,000, and that will be made up of the signs and the base. So those will cost $148,054. We did get several estimates on the installation and on the lighting, and our public works staff also reviewed those and gave us some estimates. The challenge with getting hard costs on this is because they're based on, number one, the design has to be approved first, and then the fabrication and the delivery dates are still in flux. So once we get the design approved and the approval of the expenditure of those funds, we can order them and get a firm date, and then we'll reach out and get updated costs. We do actually expect that the installation and lighting costs will be less. When we did the initial proposal or the initial cost request, we contemplated using a light specialist, separate contractor than the installation. But since then, we've actually found some contractors that would be able to do both. So again, we think that there's going to be some cost savings in there. We are also proposing a contingency of roughly about 5% be included. We're not sure if there's going to be some utilities that might have to be modified underground for the installation. So we have built in a little bit of contingency there. And again, the overall requested budget is $204,000, and this will be completely funded by Art and Public Places funds and is less than what Arium's contribution is to the fund. So that concludes my report. This is what it was before, and this is what we're proposing to move forward, again, without the Service Club emblems. So that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions at this point.
Thank you, Craig. Any questions of Craig?
Yeah, Craig, what was the objection to the monuments? Frankly, to me, they look just fine, except for those X's at the top of them. Seemed like if you took those off, the emblem, statues or monuments or whatever they are would look just fine.
That was one of the concerns. Overall, they didn't like they didn't like the design.
I mean, that's not. I mean, what was there? Why didn't they like it? What didn't they like about it?
Well, they didn't like the crosses. They thought they were too rigid. They didn't go with the kind of the feel of the leaves. These are supposed to represent. It's a very artistic representation of a tree, but they didn't. There wasn't anything that they did like about them. They just didn't like the design.
Well, does anybody else on the council have a problem with them except for those X's at the top?
Well, I can tell you, Alex, that the committee struggled with that a lot over two different meetings. And it was a combination of they look like railroad tracks. The crosses look like religious symbols. There was just a variety of concerns over all of that. So the compromise that came up with was, well, let's move forward with the Monrovia and the leaves, and then come back with the Service Club design at a later date.
Okay. Well, I mean, again, what I'm hearing is that the objection is primarily to the X's at the top, which I agree don't look very good. But
Well, they didn't, but then even the vertical pieces, one of the comments said they look too much like railroad tracks. So, you know that old saying, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and when it was all said and done, the entire committee, it was unanimous to scrap that plan.
Did you guys ever think about removing the crosses and putting leaves like in front of the monument on top of the places where the service logos are? That would certainly soften it and make it look more like trees.
There was a lot of discussions, different, incorporating, different elements and moving things around. Again, there was a lot of different discussion about that. We then went back between the first meeting and the second meeting to talk to the sign fabricator, and because these have been engineered the way they are, any modification in those designs would require them to be re-engineered. So his recommendation as the fabricator was to really pull that back and really think about what that design, instead of trying to tinker with what's this design that's been engineered specifically for this.
Okay. Well, I guess my concern is just anytime I hear about something getting tabled, I interpret it as code for forgotten about for an indefinite period of time. And I'm not interested in forgetting about our service clubs for an indefinite period of time. I think they're an important part of our community. So if we're going to table this, I want to make sure that we have a plan, a very specific plan tonight on when we will come back with new designs, as opposed to a generalized plan to come out back at some point with a new design.
That is a good point, Craig. When do you anticipate coming back with the service club portion of this?
Looking at our workload, it probably wouldn't be until later this year. Again, we'll have to reengage a design artist and bring her back and incorporate that, and then there's an additional cost for that. So probably in the summer we would start looking at some additional options. One of the other things, and Mayor Adams was at that meeting, that was discussed, is which service clubs get to be on.
Well, of course, it's going to be Rotary on the top. I mean, that goes without saying.
Have you thought, since everybody had an opinion, asking both the Art and Public Places, or maybe even the Chamber of Commerce, and the service clubs, what kind of monument they think would look good, and then you could always have a fabricator or somebody dress it up and make it look professional afterwards.
And I think
conceptual drawing could be from just about anybody.
And I think that's part of the delay on the other component is that definitely based on the feedback that we got from the Art and Public Places Committee, we want to make sure that it's moved. We get a lot of opinion before we go and have the final design done. I think the other thing about this also gives us opportunity to get the kind of the base of the design installed, and then we may have a very different opinion of what we want as the second phase of this.
Or you might also choose a fabricator who's more flexible.
Well, the fabricator is willing to do whatever we want. However, the structure will still have to be engineered. They're just basing the drawings on the engineered design that they get.
I do have to smile. You said, in looking at those, I never considered them to be trees. They look like more of those blow up things that they're used for advertising, and they're just standing straight up right now.
Yeah, that's true.
Hey, so Craig, I have a question. So down on Peck Road is another entrance to the city, right?
Yes. There's multiple ones here. When you come up Peck, you actually go through multiple cities. There are probably about 5 different cities within a span of a mile.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm only concerned with Monrovia about an entrance sign down that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's also Foothill, there's Colorado, there's Peck Road.
Well, you know what I'm getting at, Tom.
I know. So I think, and these are all great comments, but part of this is how do we get to a point where we all kind of like something that's very artistic, and that was the challenge that the committee dealt with. Is we kept trying to redesign what was in front of us, and the more we discussed it, the more it made sense to just pull it out, move forward with what we all agreed on, which was the Monrovia and the leaves, and then spend a little more time on the part that none of us agreed on, in not only the Art and Public Places Committee.
Tom, we lost your audio.
Keep it like that.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you're back.
That's how Larry prefers it. if we expand this out to the chamber and the service clubs, it's going to take even more time to come
Right.
to some agreement. And that's not that we won't get some great ideas out of those groups.
Yeah, you don't want to expand, the solicitation of ideas to too many people. I mean, you end up being paralyzed by through analysis.
You're right.
Yeah.
At some point, so you got to make a decision, and frankly, that responsibility falls to us.
Right.
These other opinions are just recommendations. Ultimately, it's our
didn't-
responsibility
That's
and our prerogative to make a
That's-
choice.
Yeah,
You're
I didn't mean
absolutely
that
right.
I didn't mean that they got to choose, but they could
I know
just
you
submit
didn't.
suggestions.
I know.
Yeah.
Well,
But
so
things get-
anyways,
things-
what we have before us tonight is whether or not we want to approve the Monrovia sign and the leaves for $204,000. I mean, I don't think we could, I don't think we could include the service club signs if we wanted to, because we don't have any idea what it will cost.
Oh, I understand that. Yeah. So, Craig, I mean, is it your, I guess, position at this point that it'll be another 9 months before you're able to come back with new design proposals?
Looking at all the processes that are involved, taking it back to the Art and Public Places Committee, ultimately getting to the council, getting the design, getting the bids. I don't want to.
You don't want to overpromise.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And
Could we
there's
leave
there's a
it
lot of
at-
things on the plate right now.
Could we get a status in 6 months? That doesn't mean you have to have a.
Yeah, absolutely.
But at least a status.
How about 3 months? Just a status report.
We can get a status every month. Yeah,
Well, we want to be reasonable. We want to give Craig
I
time to.
understand.
you know.
I understand.
My birthday's
Well,
coming up. I know
since-
he's got a lot of planning to do for that.
Well, there you go.
Since
So
everybody
then let
likes
me ask
them.
this, do we have a motion to approve this
I'd like to make a motion.
with
to
a
approve
status
the-
report on the balance of it in 3 months?
I'll move approval of that.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the $204,000 and requesting a status report on the service club portion of this image that we're looking at within 3 months. Is there any other discussion?
Yes, just since everybody loves the leaves, find a way to incorporate them on top of the trees. Maybe we've got a simple solution.
Then they really look like those little blowy things.
So we can always, Gloria, we can always send that recommendation back to the Art and Public Places Committee.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so going back to what the motion is, we have a motion and a second to approve the $204,000 and ask Craig to come back with us in 3 months with a status report. Is there any other discussion on that? Then Alice, we'll let you call the roll.
Thank you. Council members Blackburn,
Yes.
Shevlin,
Yes.
Spicer,
Thank you for the report, Craig. Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Crudgington,
Yes.
and Mayor Adams.
Yes. Great report, Craig. Thank you so much. We'll look forward to hearing, I'm sure we'll hear about other things before that, but
And we sure are feisty before we come up with unanimous votes tonight.
before we come up with what?
Unanimous votes.
Oh, yeah. Compromise is healthy. You bet. Absolutely. So this,
Can I ask something since we talked about, and I guess this would be obviously new business, we're not actually discussing it, but since the topic of Zoom meetings has come up, can we get, if there is anything to be found out about that, or if anything's been done, what going forward is going to be acceptable for holding meetings?
well, I don't think you have to have Zoom meetings. I think you can have Zoom meetings. I think, I believe you can have meetings in public as long as you conform to all of the social distancing and masking and sanitizing and all of that.
Somebody
And
told me
limits
that
on
there was some,
capacity.
yeah, somebody told me that there was some legislation that might be coming forward on that.
For
Oh,
what?
why does that not surprise us?
Legislation to say what?
That would put so many requirements on it that.
Oh,
There is a very significant bill pending right now with a lot of implications for meetings in the future.
okay. Any other questions or comments?
Just Craig, could you keep us apprised of anything that becomes substantive in that regard?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Then I want to thank everyone for attending. Thank everyone who sent in their comments. We will adjourn this meeting this evening. And thankfully, we're not adjourning it in the memory of anyone, which is the first time in some time that we've been able to do that. We'll look forward to seeing you all on Tuesday, April 6th, right back here. Thank you for being here.